10,000 dignitaries rise as one for the coronation of Emperor Veshtarek III, all except a single human woman in the center of the hall.
Human, you will stand, or you will be executed for heresy against the throne.
Guards surge forward, but the Emperor's gaze drifts upward to the viewport through the glass. The black-hulled Terran dreadnought Korhonen's word looms, prow weapons glowing cyan. Ambassador Korhonen's expression is stone, not defiant, not fearful, simply still.
Your Imperial Majesty, I demand the right to execute this insult immediately.
You will stand down, Commander. Now, that ship is monitoring everything. One wrong move, and we all die.
Aboard the dreadnought, Captain Mira Jessen watches the ambassador's biometrics on a live feed. If Elizabeth's heart rate spikes, the firing solution locks. If she is harmed, the fleet opens fire.
Biometrics locked. She's a statue. Heart rate, 68, no variation.
The standing protocol from Earth was brutally simple. If Elizabeth's heart rate spiked, the Korhonen's word would level the palace.
They'll remember the lesson from the Orion crisis. A diplomat is never unarmed.
A Hillith intelligence officer whispered into the Emperor's audio receptor, his voice tight with fear.
They're watching her heartbeat. If I execute her, we all burn.
On the dreadnought's tactical display, weapon arcs painted the palace in cyan. Every throne, every corridor.
Any Hillith weapon discharge inside the hall counts as a spike trigger. The ambassador's vitals are wired to the firing key.
If she even flinches, the fleet opens fire. They've turned my own coronation into a hostage situation.
The ambassador's heart rate stayed perfectly flat, calmer than the Emperor's own. In a hidden observation room, Hillith threat analysts confirmed the ship's weapons were hot, and the trigger was organic.
Your Majesty, I urge a preemptive strike. Destroy that flagship before it can lock weapons.
The Emperor's mind raced through 3,000 years of Hillith tradition, and one very immediate extinction-level threat.
We have planetary defense batteries. A surprise volley would cripple them before they react.
They're discussing attack options, exactly the panicked response Earth strategists counted on.
The Emperor weighed annihilation against dishonor. One was absolute, the other could be survived.
Give the order. We can still end this insult with fire instead of submission.
If I order an attack, the dreadnought fires the instant our batteries charge. She is the trigger.
Without another word, the Emperor rose and descended the steps toward the seated human.
I must speak to her. Not as Emperor to insect, but leader to leader.
The crowd parted in confusion. This was not an execution. Something far more dangerous was beginning.
Why do you remain seated when every being in this hall stands for my coronation?
Earth does not kneel to foreign powers, Your Majesty. We negotiate as equals.
The Emperor's voice dropped to a near-silent hum, meant only for her ears.
I cannot let this stand without destroying my own crown. If I execute you, we all die.
Then ask me to leave. Quietly, the ceremony resumes as if I was never here.
Go. Leave this hall. Never return. And may our silence be the only monument to this day.
Elizabeth rose with a diplomat's grace, neither triumphant nor defeated, and walked slowly toward the exit.
He'll survive this, so will I. That's what matters.
The Emperor returned to his throne and raised a hand, signaling the ceremony to continue. The coronation resumed as if nothing had happened, but everyone in that hall knew something had. Haleth guards flanked Ambassador Korhonen as she walked, unhurried, toward the diplomatic shuttle bay.
He understood. More importantly, he acted. That's rarer than wisdom.
She's out. Biometrics stable. Helm, disengage firing solutions. Return to monitoring posture.
That the Emperor completed the coronation rite, his voice steady, but every word tasted like ash.
I saved my people today. They will not thank me for it.
The human humiliated us, and he let her walk away. This will not stand.
The officers in the war room exchanged dark glances. None spoke, but the silence was agreement.
If the Emperor is too weak to enforce tradition, then tradition will find a new enforcer.
News drones captured the empty seat, where the human had defied an empire. The image would spread. Behind closed doors, Commander Threx began to build the coalition that would challenge the throne. The shuttle carrying Ambassador Korhonen rose through the atmosphere toward the waiting dreadnought.
It looks exactly as it did before the ceremony, a promise kept.
Ambassador, welcome back. Your biometrics never even twitched. That was the coldest thing I've ever seen.
The Emperor understood the arithmetic. That's half the battle. The other half starts now.
The Emperor chose dishonor. I will not prepare the loyal regiments for a correction.
In hushed tones, the officers plotted a coup to restore the old ways and erase the day's shame.
I've read the reports. Threx's silence is louder than his rage. He's moving. Bring me the names of every officer who met with Threx tonight. I will not lose my reign to a fool.
The purge would begin before sunrise. No arrests, only reassignments to the outer moons. By the time the shuttle docked, Elizabeth Korhonen was already drafting her next report to Earth. 3 days later, Ambassador Korhonen faced Earth's diplomatic council in a sealed chamber above Geneva.
The Emperor is intelligent and desperate enough to negotiate. We must offer him a hand he can accept without losing his crown.
The council debated for hours, some arguing for aggressive demands, others for patient silence.
If we push too hard, we empower the hardliners. A secret back channel is our best chance to stabilize the reach.
As the debate raged, a heavily encrypted message arrived from Helith Prime, addressed directly to the ambassador. The Emperor proposes a private channel. He will isolate Threx's faction if Earth agrees to restrict its military presence.
He's offering us the exact same bargain we gave him on the coronation day, silent understanding.
The council voted to accept. A new era of quiet cooperation began, hidden behind public postures of coldness. But the Emperor's purge had only scattered the rebels, not eliminated them. Threx's loyalists regrouped in the outer colonies. The dreadnought Korhonen's word maintained its watch, ready to receive that same silent signal if the diplomacy failed. 5 years passed. The Helith Reach settled into a brittle peace. Threx's loyalists exiled to the outer colonies, their influence crushed. But the standing protocol remained, untouched in the Imperial archives, a law that could still demand execution at any coronation.
The protocol is a wound, but removing it openly would tear open the peace. We must let time erode it.
Now a senior strategist, Elizabeth argued for restraint in every closed-door meeting.
Threx is gone, but the traditionalists still watch. One misstep, and they will rise again.
The official narrative called the coronation incident a cultural misunderstanding, never to be spoken of again. But the Emperor often stared at the dreadnought still orbiting above, a silent guarantor of the fragile ceasefire.
Pushing for formal abolition now would hand the hardliners a rallying cry. Patience is our weapon.
Publicly, Earth and Helith traded frosty formalities. Privately, their leaders spoke in the same unuttered language they had used that day. The standing protocol remained, a ghost in the palace halls, waiting for a new emperor bold enough to invoke it.
That human taught me that true power is restraint. But this protocol leaves my empire one heartbeat from war.
The emperor spent long nights staring at the dreadnought that had once held his palace hostage, and was now his secret ally.
Begin drafting the repeal legislation. Quietly. I want contingency plans for every reaction, from celebration to outright rebellion.
In the deepest hours of the night, while the court slept, the imperial scribes began to dismantle 3,000 years of tradition.
I will not leave this throne to a successor with a loaded weapon pointed at my people's heads.
A message reached Elizabeth through channels buried so deep, only 2 people in the galaxy knew they existed.
He's finally moving. This will be the most dangerous moment of his reign.
She opened a private channel to the Korhonen's word, still on station above Helith Prime, a silent partner in the coming storm. The repeal text was written in plain language, no loopholes, no exceptions, a direct repudiation of the very tradition that had nearly cost him his crown. The Emperor sealed the document himself, knowing that its release would either secure his legacy or ignite a civil war. At dawn, the Emperor summoned the High Council to the Imperial Chamber, the same hall where he had been crowned under a gun.
I have drafted a decree repealing the standing protocol, effective immediately. This law ends today.
The council erupted, some in shock, others in fury. The old guard could not believe what they had just heard. One of Threx's former allies rose to object, citing 3 millennia of tradition defiled by a single-seated human.
Surrender. Number. This is the first true assertion of our sovereignty, and I will not tolerate treason dressed as tradition.
He activated a holographic display, classified recordings of Threx's attempted coup, his oath to kill the Emperor.
Any who still stand with Threx's memory will share his fate, exile, or execution. Choose.
The chamber fell silent. None dared meet the Emperor's gaze. The weight of his authority crushed the last embers of rebellion. One by one, the councillors bowed their heads. The repeal was ratified without a recorded vote. Within the hour, Elizabeth Corhonen received the encrypted confirmation. The protocol was dead. The silent war was over. The decree flashed across every Hilith data network. The standing protocol was no more by imperial order.
My people, I abolished tradition not from fear, but because I learned from a human.
The Emperor's voice carried into every home. He spoke not of submission, but of wisdom.
A warrior demands submission. A leader inspires respect. She did not kneel and showed us a higher path.
Some streets erupted in celebration, viewing the repeal as a step toward galactic unity. Others burned effigies, clinging to the old ways, but their numbers were small and fading.
I have taken the weapon they used against me and forged a shield from it.
The seated diplomat's story spread, not as a tale of humiliation, but as the birth of an era. No one spoke her name, yet every child learned of the human who refused to stand. And above them all, the Corhonen's word maintained its silent watch, a promise that never needed to be repeated. The confirmation appeared on her private terminal. No fanfare, just text. The protocol was repealed.
It's done. After all these years, he kept his word.
Within the hour, a formal promotion followed. Commander of Earth's Ambassadorial Corps. The Council issued the promotion on the spot, honoring the architect of the silent victory.
This is not a promotion. It's a testament to what quiet resolve can achieve.
Then, a second message arrived, routed through the deepest covert channels, words from the Emperor himself. The Emperor's words were brief. Thank you for not standing. Your stillness taught us that strength need not be loud. Elizabeth read the message twice, then closed the terminal. The silence in the room felt louder than any applause.
I never wanted monuments, just this, proof that we understood each other.
She would never meet him again. But in that moment, a bridge of pure understanding spanned the light years between them. 10 years of reform transformed the Helith Reach. Trade with Earth flourished, and the Emperor's wisdom was celebrated across a dozen worlds. The Corhonen's word, once a gun to the palace, became a symbol of the peace, its weapons cold, its watch eternal. But in the outer colonies, veterans of Threx's purges gathered in secret, nursing old wounds. They spoke his name like a prayer, their hatred undimmed by a decade of peace. One of them, a former officer, addressed the cell. The Emperor sold our honor for human promises.
We will reclaim the standing protocol by force. This tyranny of peace ends tonight.
Intelligence confirms it. A coup. Threx's ghost still walks. Sound the alert. Lock down the palace. I will not let them burn what we built.
But the rebels struck faster than any warning. Armed transports breached the palace outer walls. As gunfire echoed through the ancient halls, the Korhonen's word remained silent, a promise that did not yet need to speak. The Emperor stood before a live broadcast. The gunfire, a grim cadence, his hands trembling slightly.
My people, listen. Years ago, a human sat still when my crown demanded submission. She taught us that true strength is in choosing silence over slaughter. Now I stand, but for the same cause, to ask you to remember what we built together. Do not let these traitors drag us back to the dark.
Across Helith Prime, citizens poured into the streets, not in fear, but in defense of the peace they had grown to love.
To the loyal regiments, I say, rise not for me, but for the future we almost lost once. Protect the dream.
The military split. Veterans who had served alongside humans turned their weapons on the rebels. A statue of the seated diplomat, erected years before, became a rallying point, the silent woman who had already won this war.
They remembered. The same stillness that saved us then is saving us now.
The rebels were overwhelmed by loyalist forces and citizen militias alike, their dreams of a restored past crushed under the weight of a united people. As dawn broke, the Emperor stood before his throne. Unharmed, the coup shattered, his reign more solid than ever. Half a galaxy away, an elderly Elizabeth watched the news of the failed coup on a silent terminal.
You survived again. The throne that almost killed you is now your shield.
With trembling hands, she opened a channel buried deeper than any official line.
2 old relics, both still standing. Time to say what should have been said decades ago.
She typed 6 words, no more. We were right to remain still. Then sent it into the black. On Helith Prime, the old Emperor sat alone in his study, a communication chime startling him. He read the message 3 times, his compound eyes growing wet with an emotion no human would ever fully understand.
Her. Still fierce. Still.
He smiled, a facial expression he had learned from years of human diplomacy, and let the message stay on his screen until the dawn light erased it. They never spoke again. But that message, like the first, said everything needed. 40 years, to the day after his coronation, Emperor Vesh Tarak III closed his eyes and slipped peacefully into the dark. The Helith Reach fell into mourning, a quiet grief for the ruler, who had turned a gun to a promise. The invitation came to Elizabeth Korhonen, on a secure channel, a request she attend the memorial, the only human so honored.
He remembered, even at the end, the same stillness that saved him, calling me home.
At the ceremony, she stood among thousands of Helith, a single gray-haired human in a sea of alien mourners. No one spoke. The silence was the highest tribute, the very silence the Emperor had learned from a seated human diplomat. A holographic recording of his final address played, his voice steady. Let none kneel. We have learned to stand together. Elizabeth's composure never broke, but for a moment, her eyes held a glisten that only the ship above could understand. The standing protocol was now a footnote in history texts, its threat long forgotten amidst the peace he built. She departed before the final rites, her duty done, the Korhonen's word still keeping its silent watch above the peaceful world. Years after the Emperor's passing, the Helith Reach opened the Museum of Interspecies Peace, its centerpiece, a holographic recreation of the coronation that nearly sparked a war.
There I am, still seated, still silent, the same stillness that saved us all.
The hologram showed the moment. 10,000 standing, 1 sitting, and a warship visible through the great window. Visitors learned it was not defiance, but a calculated message heard only by an emperor wise enough to listen. They understood each other perfectly. That silence was stronger than slaughter, that patience could win wars without firing a shot. The dreadnought Korhonen's word was decommissioned and placed in orbit as a museum ship, its weapons cold, its history warm.
He never fired. I never flinched. That was the entire agreement.
School groups moved through the exhibit, learning that the greatest battles are sometimes fought with stillness, not violence. In every corner of the museum, the message was the same. They refused to stand so that others could learn to sit down together. A plaque beneath the hologram held the only words that mattered. We were right to remain still, signed by two names, Human and Helith. In her final years, Elizabeth Korhonen completed her memoirs, a slender volume titled Stillness. I knew the fleet was watching. I knew they would not fire unless I flinched. I never flinched, she wrote of the Emperor. He understood the arithmetic of annihilation and chose the harder path.
He was the bravest leader I ever met, not because he fought, but because he chose not to.
She confessed that the truest victory was never spoken, never celebrated, a silent understanding between two souls. The Korhonen's word, her silent partner, was permanently decommissioned and made a museum of that very stillness.
That ship never fired. Neither did I. That was our entire agreement.
Her memoirs ended with the admission that the fleet was never a threat to the Helith, only a promise to herself. We were right to remain still. That was the only epitaph she wanted. Elizabeth Korhonen passed away 2 years later, but her stillness echoed across the galaxy, the Korhonen's word. Now, a museum orbiting Helith Prime welcomed its first joint class of human and Helith children. Inside, small faces gazed up at the holographic coronation, their eyes wide with the weight of that ancient stillness. The standing protocol, once a death sentence, was now just a faded document behind museum glass, a relic of a crueler age. Ambassadors of 100 worlds now met as equals, none demanding submission. A quiet revolution born from a single seated woman. Scholars taught that the 40-year peace was not a gift, but a choice made by two beings who understood each other perfectly. They never spoke of it again, yet it defined their entire civilization. The great dreadnought drifted in permanent orbit, a monument not to war, but to the wisdom of never firing a shot. On the anniversary of the coronation, Human and Helith gather at the museum to sit together in silence, a tradition born from the refusal to stand. And in the museum's deepest archive, the original message is preserved. We were right to remain still. It was signed by two names, an old human diplomat and an emperor who learned that true power is restraint. The emperor's 40-year reign came to be called the Great Peace, a peace bought without a single shot fired. Elizabeth Korhonen's name became a synonym for calculated courage, her stillness the standard for every diplomat who followed. One seated human, one wise emperor. And in the sky above, a warship that never fired. That was all it took to change the galaxy. The Korhonen's word remains on eternal watch, not as a threat, but as a reminder. That day, a human diplomat refused to stand, and Earth's fleet was the reason why. Not because it threatened destruction, but because it promised to protect her stillness. The Emperor understood, and in that silent moment, they forged something stronger than any treaty. They understood each other perfectly. That was the entire agreement. Their legacy proves that the greatest strength is sometimes found in refusing to move. On the anniversary of the coronation, an elderly Elizabeth Korhonen made her final visit to the museum ship alone. She walked through the silent corridors until she reached the throne exhibit. Before the holographic recreation of that day, she lowered herself into the same chair she had refused to leave decades before. The museum's AI, recognizing her biometrics, activated a hidden projection. The Emperor himself, in his full imperial regalia. The hologram stood beside her, not as an emperor, but as a companion, its eyes reflecting the same understanding they had shared that day. Neither spoke. There were no words left, only a lifetime of silence that had said everything. She turned her gaze forward, back straight, her posture a mirror of that ancient stillness. The hologram did the same. Side by side, the two diplomats faced the empty hall as they had once faced a galaxy. A single tear traced her cheek, but her heart rate remained steady. The old protocol never triggered. She simply remained still, the same stillness that had saved two civilizations. The Korhonen's word, a silent monument above a peaceful world, drifted in its eternal watch. Its weapons had been cold for decades. Its only crew now the ghosts of a memory that needed no voice. Inside, the exhibit held the only truth that ever mattered. A silent chair, and the two who never stood. On Helith Prime, the great plaza was quiet at dawn. A few figures sat on the steps of the monument, watching the ship pass overhead. No one spoke. No one needed to. The stillness said everything. As the dreadnought slipped over the horizon, its shadow fell across the palace where an emperor had once made the hardest choice. The galaxy stretched on, filled with billions of stories, but this one, this quiet refusal, would echo forever. They refused to stand so that others could learn to sit down together, and that was enough. Fade to black.